This is just amazing so far. I can't actually believe it. Peggy's reading, like 30 years ago, I was a prolific writer, wannabe fiction writer and screenplays, and I wrote a actual book called Pipe Dreams, and it was about a modern day god of Pan. So that was interesting. And then Greensleeves was, I think, the first tune I learned to play on the piano. So it was like, oh, this is awesome. But anyhow, glad to be here and welcome everybody and welcome to everyone on Zoom. Glad you showed up and everybody here as well. This topic is very different. This is how it all began. I saw this sign. It was at the end of my road, and it's at the Grace Bible Fellowship Church. They always have the signs up, and it says, "Does your spiritual house need spring cleaning?" And I saw that a couple months ago, and I thought, gosh, that's interesting, and it just made me think about my own spiritual cleaning, and I thought it might be a good topic for a talk. And so I am going to speak about spiritual clutter, and even though it's almost summertime, it's a good time for spring cleaning anytime and spiritual cleaning, so any season of the year. And so we all understand the concept of just general clutter. It's just too much stuff that accumulates and gets in our way, basically. And there's many forms of clutter. The two main ones are emotional and physical clutter, and they all have a trait in common, and that trait is clutter is a byproduct of indecision. That's the main focus with clutter. Extra stuff needs removed, new priorities need established, and different choices need to be made. And it all allows for new energy to be welcomed in. And spiritual clutter is whatever gets in the way of our own unique spiritual journeys and keeps us out of alignment with our best and most true self. When we surrender and let go of all the things that distract and overwhelm us, we get more free space and open to a deeper connection with spirit. And it's a place where we find a joy and a peace that is not temporary. Psalm 16:11 says, "It's where we find the fullness of joy." So imagine spiritual clutter as a spider web, and there's many invisible strings, and each string is made up of all of our spiritual stuff, all of our spiritual awareness and our learnings that we've experienced in our life so far. It is all the various traditions that we've learned, the religious practices, all the spiritual texts we've read over the years. It's just so much. Our teaching, our mentors, beliefs and judgment about spirit and memories, and even our childhood indoctrination. It all plays into that, and then there's so much more. But all of these strings create our unique spiritual energy field that we operate from. And many of our strings overlap. They get twisted, they get tangled, and many of them are outdated. And they just create a big, messy, stringy spiritual platform that prevents us from a clear and focused path to our divine source. So questions we might ask ourselves: what am I jamming into my spiritual closet or junk drawers? What is keeping me from a clear spiritual path? And am I so distracted or overwhelmed with my own wants and needs that there's not enough room left for God to come in? Does the television and our phones and computer and social media, our bad habits, fears, and worries prevent us from understanding what God has planned for us in this lifetime? And what do I need to let go of to release and surrender what's not working for me anymore? Just like the chant that Laura played for us. In order to free up space for what would work better. This can be anything or anyone. It can be a person. It can be a place, a material thing, a product, a belief, a pattern of thinking, and so on, in ways of behaving as well. And it just is anything that takes away from who we really are deep inside. So I mentioned, I will mention that I had my own recent experience with spiritual clutter, and it was significant. It was like the biggest thing ever for me. But in August, it'll be 3 years since I moved to Michigan from living in California for most of my adulthood. And relocating here was not on my original plan at all. You know, it's a nice place to visit. I grew up here, but I didn't want to live here. And, but life events, and, you know, I won't go into all of it, but the changes just got in the way for me. And I needed to make a deep decision and move here for several different reasons, mostly for my family. And the unexpected death of my father was the pivotal factor that brought me in this new direction. That was the main thing. So, you know, the spiritual clutter, you know, I left all my friends. I left a spiritual community that I adored. It was beloved, you know, Science of Mind in Oakland. And, you know, a home and friends. And then I had to retire. Well, I could work here, I guess. I still have a license. But I left my company that I was with for years because they don't have places here in Michigan. So I retired a year early. So there was all kinds of stuff that was just bombarding me. And I'm usually, you know, fairly optimistic, and I tried to just keep it together and, you know, use my spiritual tools and, you know, energy work and breath work and meditation, etc. But shortly after I moved here, COVID. And for a person like me that is very social, it was horrid. It was the absolute kind of worst thing for me. The social isolation, living alone out in rural America, and it was just overwhelming. And the other thing is that I had no purpose. I didn't have a purpose. I mean, I was a successful, you know, nurse and ER, and I didn't have any purpose, and I didn't have any network or anything. So I was just like left kind of flailing. And, you know, I got insomnia. I was anxious, and I was so homesick for California, and I didn't have a spiritual community. And then I found this Interfaith, which was a true blessing. And, you know, it kind of got me out of that spiritual limbo that I was in, and like a dark night of the soul sort of thing. And I just didn't have enthusiasm for my regular things that I love, like hobbies and arts and crafts and even nature. I just didn't have that drive to do things. So after Interfaith, and I took classes, which Delith mentioned, they were awesome, and I volunteered and did as much as I could with the COVID restrictions. And I also rediscovered this book that I had, and it's called Entering the Castle by Carolyn Meese. And it's based on the mystic Teresa of Avila. And it takes the reader through 7 mansions, and each has several rooms, which lead to the center mansion where God lives. And for you, anyone, the highest soul consciousness. And it's about awakening the spirit, the individual spirit, and the soul of humanity, and how compassion and self-awareness and union with the divine helps us to receive grace and guidance and brings us closer into God. And it helps us to discover, the book helps you discover what God's purpose for your life is and how to live authentic life. So it started that, and interfaith and this helped me to have a spiritual kind of reawakening and declutter all the bombardment and try to focus on not everything, like the Bible and A Course in Miracles, and so much that I was reading that it was too much. I needed to pare it down and just get some simplicity, and it really helped me. And there was one other thing that I found, that I needed the courage and strength, because like I said, I was out there. I don't know if anybody experienced kind of what I did, but it's very difficult, and it's such a challenge when you're usually in control. So, so I needed courage and strength, and I came across Stoic philosophy, which probably read it years ago in some philosophy class or knew of it, but I started reading it, and it grew. The Greek philosophers, and I centered in on Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. And they talk about self-restraint and uncoerced commitment to treat others well and to choose to be good in every situation, no matter what. No matter what happens, that you present yourself and your actions are good ones. No whining, no complaining. You do good to feel good is one of their mottos. And you learn to love everything, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. You just love everything, and you are objective, and you don't get into that subjective mode. You just try to stay objective with judgments, and be unselfish in your actions. And then the main thing for me was to be willing to accept what's outside of my control. I didn't have control that I was so used to having in my life. So that helped with the spiritual clutter that, I can't control that, and that's just how it is. And I'm going to have to deal with it and move forward. So, and stop wishing for things to be different. And be grateful for what we have, no matter what happens. So those are concepts and strategies that help me with spiritual clarity by making new choices. And some of them have been really difficult to make, but they have helped me move forward. And, spiritual clutter clearing is all about surrendering and letting go of things and ideas that no longer serve us and help us move closer to the divine spirit. And, we need to get rid of the things that squeeze out our joy and love and peace. We need to just move those out of our life. And those are sometimes the really difficult decisions. And because it prevents you from fulfilling your spiritual life and your life purpose. And probably most everyone in this room believe that we are on this earth for some special life purpose or something that our Creator has a plan for us. And the other thing that I saw in the readings, I did a lot of reading, and they compared spiritual clutter or house cleaning, whatever you want to call it, to inner feng shui, that we harmonize our surrounding environment by positioning things into specific places so that it changes the flow of the energy. So you can apply that to spirit, that we can change spiritual energy by moving things and position life elements into the right spot in order to become our best self and live the life that we were meant to live. And if there is an element of spiritual house cleaning that keeps you from following a clear and focused spiritual path, or if there is something that does not feed your soul and draw you to your divine source, letting go of it, surrendering, and connecting with Spirit's message for you is the way. And I wasn't familiar with this, but I still read Science of Mind magazine, and I still get it every month. In February 22, or this year, they had an article on hushing, and I had never heard about hushing. And it's from Eric Maisel, and his book was entitled Fearless Creating. And hushing is like quieting our mind and stopping it from being on auto scan. And it's kind of like mindfulness. It's where you listen to the messages that you hear from Spirit when you get quiet, and the truth, divine intelligence. And hushing is in the present moment, and it's in silence, but it's done even like mindfulness. I mean, you can be meditating, you need to be silent. You can be meditating, doing yoga, prayer, walking in nature, looking at a beautiful art piece or anything, or music, instrumental music. But it's just a different way to get in touch with the still voice within and our ultimate guide. So all you do is get quiet and you settle in however you settle in for your, to go within, I should say. Everybody kind of does a little different. And you just say to yourself, just focus and say, I am hushing. I am hushing. And you wait and you just repeat that and you wait for the still small voice to come to you. And you can ask the still small voice questions, and you can ask, like, especially for spiritual clutter, what should I let go of? And what should I keep? And you, when you're trying to clear out spiritual clutter, you're searching for soul clarity and renewal. And so you need to be open to surrendering any spiritual mess or any clutter. And the reward, of course, is joy and peace that we can only get through our divine spirit that guides us. Everybody, most people know Marie Kondo. I mean, she's the queen of clutter, mostly for homes and offices, but this pertains to spiritual clutter as well. It's discard everything that does not spark joy. And, we can use that same quote for spirituality and spiritual clutter. First, we identify what doesn't spark joy in us, in our spiritual life in this case. And before we discard it, though, like she does with her other forms of clutter, is you need to bless it. Like, you need to bless whatever it is, even if it's not something that you want in your life or that was good for you. You need to bless it before you discard it and let it go. And it's just as simple as that. And you thank it for its service. I know what you were there for me for X, but you're outdated or whatever, and then just let it go. And when you let it go in peace, it's spiritual Decluttering is a process of unpeeling layers through motivation and inspiration from divine spirit. And when we become focused and make clear spiritual life decisions, we live authentically. And we become what we came to earth to be, using our own unique gifts and talents for the greater good. And I'll just close with another Bible quote. I don't know why I had all these Bible quotes for this talk today, which I normally don't, but they just seem to work. And this one is from Ephesians 4:23. It says, "Let your spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes." And that's all I have on this topic, and thank you, and have a blessed day and a wonderful week. Yeah. Thank you.